that's what I love about it, is that it's unapologetically real. It feels like a part of me is speaking out, and it feels really, really good. I didn't really think about any other career. Write the book you want to read. In my office, like we've said time and time again, it's either laugh or cry. I do it for me because it's the way that I cope with all of that. If I get that, that healing out of it, then it's all worth it. Yeah. I know what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Oh, good. Today on Stories of Creativity, we're here with my guest, Andee Crocker. Mm-hmm. And Andee is a novelist. She's a full-time mom, and she works full-time. She's got 2 young kids, and she works for the medical examiner's office full-time. And I don't know how you do all that, Andee, but I'm going to ask you so we can all find out how to have such a full life and also make time for your creativity.
Well, it's not easy. I can tell you that. Somebody once told me, or somebody once asked me, like after I had Henry, my first child, somebody once asked me, he didn't sleep hardly in any, and I was just like a zombie the whole time. I was so tired, and for like the first several months, I just did not get much sleep at all. And so someone asked me, it's like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you awake right now? And the only answer I could come up with is, I don't know. I just am. I just do. And I think especially when it comes to my kids, it's not something I really give a whole lot of thought about. It's something that needs to get done, and I just, as their mother, it's part of my job just to do it. And so I think that's how I make it through a lot of that, is just doing it. I know that's probably not helpful to anybody, but that's the best explanation I can come up with for that. It means a lot of sacrificing. There's certainly, I wish I had more time to work on my creativity aspect of it, the writing especially. I don't get a whole lot of time to do that, but I take every moment I can. But that's life. So.
Well, I'm really impressed by how you manage it and still make time to write books. I think you have really no-nonsense approach about it. Just, this is what I need to do, so it's going to get done. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that about you.
Oh, well, thank you.
So tell me about writing. How did you get started writing novels, and was that always a part of your life, or did that come in later?
So I think I've always been a writer. I haven't ever been one to journal. I know a lot of writers talk about journaling.
Sorry.
No,
it's okay. Very, very distracting. Come.
I know a lot of writers talk about journaling. I was never one to journal. I guess I don't feel that, and this is going to sound really bad, but when I write, I do it to escape from reality. And so I don't like writing about reality because it just brings it down. It kind of defeats the purpose for me. And so when I write things, I like to use it as an escape, as a way to just, get away from the day and the stress and all of that. But I've always been writing stories and things. I wrote for my 6th grade class, we did a lot of stories. Like every 6th grader did a short story, and we put them all together. And the school actually had it published. And so I actually have a hard copy of all these 6th grader stories, and that was so fun. But I've been doing it off and on, and I didn't really start dedicating a whole lot of time to it until probably, I don't know, about COVID era. So it was about 4 years ago or so. I had this idea for a book, and I was really searching around for a book that I wanted to read. And I was watching a podcast. I honestly don't remember which one, but it was one of the authors that I like to read. And she said, best advice I can give is write the book you want to read. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And so I just started rolling with it, had this idea in my mind, and here we are 4 years later, and it's 80,000 words, a full-on novel. And I look at it and I read through it and I'm like, where did this come from? It just feels like it came out of nowhere.
Is that Out of the Black?
Yes. Yeah. That's the one funny enough, the only one I've finished. But, yeah. And it's kind of weird how it happens sometimes. It's just get going with it, and it's all of a sudden it's a full novel, and just like, here you go. Whoa, okay, where did this even come from? That's kind of crazy. But yeah, so I haven't been writing, I guess, full-time all the time until lately. So, even now, obviously it's not full-time, but it's the most I can get out of every day. So, which is more than I used to. But yeah.
So you've described to me how excited you are to spend some time writing, and how you take little corners of the day where something else is going on, and you might be in between things or waiting somewhere, and you'll write in those spaces. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm curious, how does practicing your creativity in that kind of way, just fitting it into your life where you can, how has that impacted you as a person, and maybe even your family, or just the rest of your life?
Well, it certainly impacted me as a person. I've done things that I didn't think I was capable of.
Nice.
And so it's pulled me kind of out of this shell and made me realize that I'm capable of a lot more than I give myself credit for. So it's given me a lot more confidence in myself. I feel more myself when I'm writing. It feels like a part of me is speaking out, and it feels really, really good. I had somebody encouraged me to enter a short story contest. I've never been a short story writer. I didn't think I could do that. And then I wrote a couple, and I entered these. And I was just like, wow, maybe this is something I actually can do. And so, I think it's just that boost of confidence that's really helped out. Especially I feel more like myself, I guess, if that makes sense.
So much sense.
Yeah.
That's exactly, everything you just described has been my experience too, of exploring my creative interests more. It's so exciting to hear you say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really beautiful to experience.
Yeah, it is very much so.
Oh yeah, what kinds of things inspire you? And I really wanted to ask you that question because of the themes in your books, and the one that I've read some of it, were tough for me.
Yeah.
And I know a little bit about where you work because my dad works there too.
Yeah.
And you guys have to go through, I think, some pretty dark content in the course of your work. So how do you find inspiration from those dark themes? And maybe I'm unfairly characterizing what you write about, but just tell me about your inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration comes from a number of things for me. I'll get inspired by a number of different things. Sometimes it's dark things. I don't know where those really come from. I mean, I've had some experiences in my past that I guess have kind of channeled into that. Nothing quite as dark as I write about, but I just feel like I don't know. It's hard to explain. I think writing about those dark things helps me cope with seeing it and hearing about it and you know, and I think it's part of my way of coping with that.
That makes sense.
Because it is, you know, to somebody on the outside especially, it is rather traumatic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to say you get used to it after a while. I don't think anyone ever really gets used to it. You become a little numb to some of it, but the writing kind of helps me stay
Lenny.
sane. Dude.
That's too much.
He's okay. He's okay. And so the writing kind of helps is, and I've said this before, is writing has kind of been like my therapy. It has,
Lenny. No.
it's helped me sort out my thoughts in a way that would be really difficult otherwise. And, but I mean, it can come from, you know, the stuff I encounter at work to stories I've heard. It can come from, the other day I was thinking about, funny enough, the paper towels in the bathroom at work. And I don't know why this came out of it, but I was pulling this paper towel out, and you know, I mean, they're those brown, cheap, thin paper towels. And as I'm pulling the second one out, because the first one is never enough to dry your hands, and I'm thinking to myself, if they spend this money on these paper towels, and they, you know, they're supposedly cheaper paper towels, and I get that. But at the same time, it's like, if you're using twice as many, is it really cheaper in the long run, you know? And so these are the kind of thoughts that go through and then I start thinking about, okay, well, if it's true for these paper towels, is it true for other things? You know, are there things that we compromise on that we don't really have to compromise on, or that the compromise is worse than what we originally wanted, and we're just living with it because we think, oh, it's cheaper than it's, you know, it's worth saving the money on. And so that's where my brain goes.
Yeah.
And it can happen at any moment. You know, that was certainly the last thing I expected to come out of my brain when using the restroom at work. But it just, I don't know, I can't control it. It comes when it comes. So
Very cool.
yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know what we were talking about, the medical examiner's office is where, in this country, in the United States, where all the deaths, everybody who dies, their case goes through the medical examiner's office. So
Well, usually, not everybody who dies, but
Thank you.
some of them. Yes, my boss would hate me if I didn't at least clarify that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
messing this up,
okay. No, you're fine.
At any rate, they handle all kinds of different stories of people's deaths shortly after that event occurs, and I can only imagine how traumatic that must be, and how writing stories involving death could help a lot process that. So very cool that you found a way to work that out and develop your creativity and enjoy it and get all of that out of it for your own life. Love it.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, especially working in my office, you have to have a channel for it because otherwise it'll just consume you. And I mean, death is always there. It's always the thing that people don't want to talk about, but at the same time, it happens to everybody. And so, you know, I guess that kind of opened my eyes to working there is it was kind of an eye opener of, oh, yeah, I guess this is a perfectly natural part of life. It's an uncomfortable part of life, but but again, I mean, it's in my office. It's like we've said time and time again. It's either laugh or cry, and most of the time we choose to laugh about it, but you gotta have a channel for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, that actually ties into this other question, and maybe that's what you would want to share about it. But have you ever healed from a personal or emotional injury through writing?
Yeah, and still healing. The loss of my mom was really hard on me. I was 2005, so it's been almost 19 years, and it's still. I mean, she was my best friend. She was everything to me, and I was about 2 weeks shy of my 21st birthday when I lost her. And, I mean, she was sick for a long time, about a year and a half before she passed. But it had really, using the writing and everything has really helped me process those really deep emotions. It's pain that sticks with you that never goes away. And it's difficult, but I've been very, very thankful to have that outlet that I can use to really help channel that. So yeah, it has been very therapeutic for me. The loss of my mom, the other things, just any kind of trauma that I go through is something that I use, just pour as fuel into my writing. And that's out of everything, regardless of whether anyone reads it or anyone enjoys it. I do it for me because it's the way that I cope with all of that. And so if I get that, that healing out of it, then it's all worth it as far as I'm concerned.
Beautiful.
So
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a particular creative process of some kind? I know you've talked about it just kind of coming spontaneously into your imagination.
I guess I never really thought about it. Creative process. I mean, as far as writing goes, well, I need quiet. Mm-hmm. I have to be able to think. It's hard to do in a house with 2 children and 5 pets, and so there's not a whole lot of writing that gets done at home, unfortunately, unless it's early in the morning before the kids are awake. But that's really the biggest thing is I need to be able to hear myself think. If I can't hear myself think, then it's difficult. But
I hear you.
Yeah.
I need quiet too.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll put on some music, though I found it can't be any music with words, because then I'll just end up singing along and get completely distracted, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So,
are there any parts of the process of writing a book where you often get stuck, and what do you do when you get stuck?
So this is a problem I've had with my latest novel, as you all know, and I'm still stuck. I've kind of worked it kind of out in my head a little bit. I have to play with it. I think most of the time, if I get stuck, and one of my other writer friends brought this up. If you get stuck, that means there's something wrong previously, and you got to go back and sort out what that is. Mm-hmm. And so I've kind of traced back this. No, I mean, it makes total sense to me. I'm like, okay, if I'm stuck here, then something else has happened that shouldn't have happened, or that doesn't make sense, and so I need to go back and fix that. And so I've started back kind of at the beginning and kind of retraced my steps, trying to figure out how I got here. And then there's also playing around with it. A lot of times I'll start, if I have a novel, I'll start a document that's like just for notes. And so I'll take notes on, okay, different scenarios, how I want it to play out, and see which one works the best, and go from there. I unfortunately, with this latest one, I haven't had a whole lot of time to play with it. And so that's been the biggest hamper on that. But it's fun to see that process, even though it's frustrating to get stuck, and to, I want to get to point B, but I'm like, okay, do I take a taxi? Do I take a bus? Do I take a train? How do I get here? And so I think just setting all that out in each side, each part, and being, okay, well, if I end it here, how would this go? If I end it here, how would that go? And then just picking the one that works the best. And I think a lot of times too, I'll get in over my head. Sometimes I'll get stuck in editing. Oh, I don't like the way this sounds, or I don't like the way that sounds. I got to change that. I got to fix that. And then I realize I'm getting stuck in the editing loop, and I'm just like, okay, I need to actually get this written. And even some of my writer friends will say, don't worry so much about the editing with your first draft. Just get it written. Just get it out. And I cannot believe how incredibly difficult it is to actually stick to that. I am obsessed with editing it beforehand. And so trying to remind myself that, okay, it's okay. Just get it written first, and then you can hash out all the details afterward. But yeah, it's difficult.
That makes sense.
Difficult.
And trying to find out where's the line, like what's the line between first draft work and editing work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think of something, a big chunk to put in between things, is that editing, or you're still getting the draft down?
Yeah. I think the draft is, I feel like first draft is not complete until it's done, until the end is there and you have every piece in there. Because my first novel went through, and it's still going through. I'm working through another revision. Wow. And so, it's revision after revision after revision. Then I send it out, to be read and get feedback on. And then, okay, this isn't quite working. Okay, I need to tweak this a little bit. All right, that means I probably need to change this over here. And so there's a lot of that. And I guess it comes from the way I write. In my writers groups, they always say you're either one or the other. You're either a pantser or plotter. And a pantser is somebody who just writes it and doesn't really think so much about, an outline or any of that. And then you deal with a lot of that in editing. You spend a lot of time in editing. And then there's the plotter, the one who sets out the outline and plots everything out to a T before they actually start writing the story. I am definitely the former.
Yeah.
I just write it all out as it comes, and then if it's a jumbled mess, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna fix that in editing. All right, we're gonna go. And so, that's yeah.
I'm the former too.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to talk to you about how you deal with other people's reactions to your creative work, especially because of some of the difficult themes. You don't seem to worry about it. You just write what you want to write, and how do you get it out of your head? What other people might. Sorry, what can I start this?
No, yeah. I know what you're trying to say. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. there are people that are going to like it and people that aren't going to like it. You got to be okay with that from the beginning. And that's why, another reason why when I write for myself. I write what I want to see, what I want to read. And will there be people that like it? I hope so. Will there be people who are absolutely turned off by it? I know that. There are very dark themes, and it's not something, that everybody's going to be able to get through. And that's okay. It's part of it. It's one of those things I can't say if it ever makes it to publishing and it's read en masse. I don't know how I would react if, there are numerous people who don't know me are just reading the story and, oh, I can't read this. It's awful and yada, yada. I can't say for certain how I would, I'm sure that would probably hurt a little bit. I think I might be a psychopath if it didn't. This is my work. But at the same time, I'm not doing it to make a living off of it. To me, the goal of publishing is just to get it into book form and get it in so I can hold it in my hands and say, this is mine. I did this. I won't feel like it's done, like it's complete until that happens. And so whether I find an agent and get a publishing deal, or if I do it through self-publishing, that's really my end goal, is to have that. Even if I have the only copy made, that's all that matters to me, is that it's in my hands, that I can hold it as mine. I think that might be part of the therapeutic process I was talking about, is it's taken me on this journey that I've discovered so many things about myself, about what I've been through in the past, and how it defines me, but not in the way I thought. And so it feels like the journey's not over yet until, like I was saying, the book is in my hands. And I'm like, okay. And that's the moment I take a deep breath and go, okay, it's done, And I talk about that too in when I talk about what I do on a day-to-day basis, because I talk to a lot of families, grieving families on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes all they're looking for is someone to listen. And so, you can kind of tell when somebody's ramped up and they're spewing out words, and some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't. They're asking a million questions, and, their mind's going a million ways from Sunday, and it all sounds really scatterbrained. But then there's that moment when they take a breath and they're like, okay, and they slow down. And it's almost like the talking and everything was their way of getting it all out, so that they weren't holding it in anymore, letting it go, I guess is the word. And that's kind of how I feel with the book, is getting that done. And that's going to be my moment of, okay, I can let this go now.
Wow.
So, that's how I deal with it, is, again, I know not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to understand that journey. I hope for some that it does, and that it resonates with them. And even if it's just one that it resonates with, that's completely, that's wonderful. And I will take that gladly. But I'm doing this for me, is what I'm doing it for. So
I love your clarity about why you're doing it, and that it's for you, and that you take risks with your creative life, and you don't apologize for it or feel inhibited by anything.
No,
I love that.
it's me. I spent a lot of my childhood trying to be someone else for someone else, And all it got me was miserable. And I'm like, no, this is for me, and I'm going to do it my way.
Right on. Good for you, Andee. I love that. Wow. Something else I really love about your work. Lenny, I'm so sorry, but we can't go outside right now. Come here. Something I really love about your writing is how you give the reader a sense of where they are, who they're with. Like, my imagination can see everything, but you don't spend much time on that. Like, it happens in the course of dialogue and action that's going on in the story. I think it's really masterful, and I was just, trying to figure out how you learned to do that.
I've always been more on dialogue than on world building. And I've had some people who like it and some people who are like, no, you really should include more world building. I want to see what this looks like and everything. And so that's been kind of, I've tried to include a little more of that and explain what's happening. But I grew up reading stuff like Stephen King and God, now I'm blanking on her name. Agatha Christie. Oh,
Right,
I'm sorry, Agatha. Agatha Christie. I grew up on mysteries and suspense, and there's a lot of build up, not so much world building, but it's built on emotion and manipulating that emotion. I love that kind of stuff because that really, when you put your reader really into the character and put them right there with them as they're experiencing these things, I don't know. To me, it's a more powerful story that way. And I've had this debate with various writers about first person versus third person point of view, and not to say there aren't third person books that I have enjoyed. Obviously, Harry Potter is third person, and a lot of other things, but there's nothing like, to me, like first person point of view when you're really in the middle of the story and as it's happening. I don't know if I really learned that from anywhere. I guess from reading Stephen King and Agatha Christie and numerous other things. And in all honesty, the best advice I've heard from writers and seasoned writers, authors, published authors, is best thing you can do for your writing if you want to get better is to read. And that's one thing I love to do. If I'm not writing, if I have the free time, that's the caveat. I have to have the free time and the silence. But if I have the free time and the silence, I'm either writing or I'm reading. One of the two. I love it. There's very little compares to getting lost in a good story, in a good book, It's one of my favorite things to do.
Would you tell me the story of a memorable creative experience that you had, even as a child or at any point, when your writing surprised you or something else creative you were doing just took an unexpected turn?
The short story experience that I had, I had been thinking about it for a while. I had read several short stories, and a few other in my writers group were saying, oh, you should try writing a short story. Just try it, And I think what really got me started on that was one of my favorite podcasters. She was doing, for a long time, she would do these weekly prompts, and just to get some inspiration and to see what people would come up with. And it kind of created this community, not only just of writers, but we would critique each other, and we would talk about, oh, that's a really cool idea. And I remember this story that we did, And I think the prompt was had something to do with shoes, walking in someone else's shoes or something like that. And for some reason, my mind went to, what if it's pairs of shoes in the closet talking to each other about what they do when they were worn last, or who wears them, or and so I just kind of ran with it. Had this cute little story about these pairs of shoes talking to each other, and somebody commented on it, and this is a really unique idea, and it was kind of outside of the box of what everyone else was putting together. And they were like, you should try writing some short stories. And it was nice to hear that, that commendation of praise, I guess, I mean, that always feels good. But especially with something I wasn't really familiar with, and so that was a fun experience, and it's something that stuck with me. But it was part of the thing that kind of helped me come out and try more. So, okay, well, I've never really thought of myself as a poetry writer. Maybe I'll try doing that. Yeah. Or, I'm terrible at writing music. Maybe I should try doing that, So I have not had success with either of those yet. But anyway.
I love that.
Yeah.
Are there any other creative activities outside of writing that you have wanted to do?
Well,
I haven't tried yet.
Oh, I haven't tried yet.
Yeah.
I didn't start with writing. I was, for the longest time when I was a kid and growing up, it was all about music. Mm-hmm. I was in choir for pretty much all the years that I was in school. Fifth grade was the earliest I could join choir, and so it was fifth grade all the way up till I graduated. And so for the longest time, it was all about music. That's what I did. And the writing was there, but it was kind of in the background. It wasn't something I really focused a whole lot on. I've done a handful of like art, like not portrait, but canvas art, and that kind of thing. I don't know. I think if I were to try anything else, it would be that. Yes, yeah, because I do love visual art. Mm-hmm. I'm a very visual person, and so I do like to see some of that. But I don't know what else I would focus on or try.
You've talked about getting your piano tuned up and
yes,
getting back to playing the piano. So it sounds like that's something that you still love.
Oh yes,
plan to go back
yes.
to as well.
The music never stops. The music never stops. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not singing, humming. I mean, in the car, everywhere in the car, I'm singing along to the music. There's music playing that I know. Awesome. That never stops. Music is like breathing to me. I can't. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. And I have I always joke, I have this like constant unending playlist of music in my head all the time. And I mean, it'll go from just random things like a big band song to a movie soundtrack or something like that, just random things. And but it's constantly playing up there in my dreams, in my sleep, every moment of the day, it's constantly there.
Like a soundtrack for your life.
It pretty much is. Yes. Yes. And my son Henry always jokes, "Mommy, you have a song for everything." He's like, pretty much. Yes, I do.
Just curious, that made me think of a random question. Do you ever have a song pop into your head when you like need an inspiration for your writing, or even an idea for something else in life, and like a song comes into your head and then the lyrics apply? or the mood of it, like changes your mood in a way that you need at that moment, or?
Yeah, sometimes music is very emotional for me. And so it's driven, I think the songs that come to mind are driven by those emotions that I'm feeling. And so it's not even so much about the lyrics of the song, but the emotion that it provokes. And so, but yeah, there sometimes is like, okay, I need to listen to something that is going to lift me up and bring me out of this funk. But sometimes it's giving into that too, is listening to the music that's kind of on the same level emotionally, kind of helps me work through it until I'm ready to move on to, something that might lift me up. And so, yeah, but it's a very emotional thing for me. So it ebbs and flows.
How did you feel about this question about a childlike playfulness? What experiences in your adult life, if any, have inspired a childlike playfulness and spontaneity in your creativity?
Children.
Your children, yeah.
Children. I will tell you, and this is one of the best things, a part of being a mother that I can tell you about. When I was a kid, all the kids, they talk about what they want to be when they grow up. And I want to be an astronaut, and I want to be, all the girls are, I want to be a mermaid. Yeah. That's where my 7-year-old lands right now. She wants to be a mermaid or the tooth fairy or something like that. And I always wanted to be a mother. Oh. I always knew that was, I didn't really think about any other career. It was, I want to be a mom. I think partly because my mom was so special to me. And she, if anyone was going to inspire someone else to be a mother, it was going to be her. So when I became a mother, and nothing really prepares you for that. I mean, it's a change that is, when they say it's life-changing, it really is. And it takes you on all sorts of journeys that you never thought you would go on. And it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I think ever will do. To think about what I do for these kids is going to not only shape their lives, but also the lives of the people that they interact with. And so I think people, and this is the sad thing about today, is I think a lot of people underestimate that. The power of what it is to be a parent. Parents are the very first influence that any child gets. And that sets the tone for the rest of their life and what they do and how they interact with others and what they do in society and everything. I mean, it impacts on such a huge level. I think that's been so widely underestimated. But I will tell you, things that I used to love as a kid, getting to introduce them to my kids, there is nothing in this world that will make you feel more like a child again than seeing it through another child's eyes, through your child's eyes. Having these experiences, teaching Alice how to roller skate. I used to spend a lot of time at the skating rink when I was a kid. And so teaching her how to roller skate and seeing her enjoy this the way I did. Henry's in choir now. That's been such a strange experience, is now I'm the one sitting in the audience watching him on stage, It's almost out of body. It's kind of weird, but it's so cool. And I mean, it's just it's such a neat thing to go through. But yeah, I mean, anything these kids do, it's, you know, playing a game with them or teaching them something for the first time, or seeing the looks on their faces when they see something the first time. And they're like, oh, that's really cool. What is that? And, you know, I kind of have to retrain I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you don't know anything about this. Okay. All right. All right. And so, yeah, it will make you feel like a kid again, for sure. And that impacts my creativity a lot. Just being able to think about those experiences from a different perspective now, and wondering what went through my parents' minds when they were introducing me to this. You know, I mean, it's introspective, but it's also retrospective too, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds profound.
It is. It is very much. I mean, I feel like that's, if there's any role on this earth that I was meant to fill, or that's more important, it's that one. I feel like that's the most important thing I could ever do here. And that, you know, I try and keep that in my head, is like, even though I enjoy the writing, and I enjoy the singing, and I enjoy doing all these other, you know, these other things, I always say I enjoy what I do at work. I do to an extent. It's working there has helped me discover really what I want to do in this life. But being a mom trumps all of that. That's the most important thing to me, is just being a good mother to those kids. And
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you have any advice for someone who would like to write a novel?
Yeah, I mean, best thing I could say is don't stop. You know, there are going to be times where you're going to look at it, read through it, and wonder, you know, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? You know, this isn't going to go anywhere. What am I doing? You know, there are going to be times when you're stuck, when you don't know where to go with it. And just don't stop. Just don't stop. Don't let it stop you, you know. Don't focus so much on what other people are doing. They talk about originality. Don't worry about originality. There is none anymore. Except for the fact that the story that you're telling can only be told in your way by you. So
right.
Each of us, even though the story may not be original, each of us has a very unique voice and can only tell it our way. So, you know, yeah.
I 100% agree with you, Andee.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I think about originality, too.
Yes, yeah.
And so you can't help be original if you're being yourself.
Right, yeah.
And you don't need to try.
Because it's not just about the story, it's the way you tell it.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
It's your perspective. And so that's, I think, what matters. That's what makes the story interesting, regardless of whether it's an original story or, you know, a retelling of Pocahontas or something like that. You know, it's every one of those stories is important. And I truly believe that every one of those stories should be heard, you know, should be out there to read. So
I love that, and I think that's excellent advice for people working with their creativity. Don't stop.
Yeah.
And don't worry about being original. Just use your own voice. Is that a good way to summarize what you
That's exactly right.
say?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. Have you ever felt a sense of failure about your creative work, and how did you approach your creativity after that experience?
I don't know. You know, I can't say that I have felt a sense of failure. I mean, there have been times certainly where, you know, and it's usually when I'm comparing my work to others, which you should never do. Don't do that. Because again, your own voice is your own voice, and it's not going to sound like anyone else's, and that's the reason why it's so unique and why it's so special. And I think that's why I have to I have to remind myself of that sometimes. It's like I'll read some of these other authors and be like, man, this is really good, and think to myself, well, my writing's never going to be this good. But then, I have friends and fellow writers who will be like, well, it doesn't have to be that good. It has to be you.
Right.
And being you is far more important than measuring up to this other author. You may or may not ever measure up to this author. You may surpass them. You may, not measure up at all. But what's important is you getting your voice and your story out there. That's the important part. And so just reminding myself of that, again, when I was saying to keep going, just keep going, and don't compare your work to others, because as long as it's coming from you, and you don't have to make it, flowery or use, big terms or whatever. Another one of my favorite articles, or it's not really a podcast, more of a publication that I like to read, is by this guy who's a fellow convict, and his interpretations and perceptions of things, it's remarkable. It's a different world than the one I'm used to. And that's kind of stuff, but it's not flowery prose or anything like that, but it's real. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about it, is that it's unapologetically real. And, you may not like what he's saying, but he's going to say it his way or the highway kind of thing. And I admire that. I love that. That's what I like to see. I want to know that what I'm reading is what they really think on this. This is something that's authentic, that is, from their heart, so to speak. I feel like if I don't, if I continue, to let myself bring myself down, measuring up to other authors or whatever, I feel like that's giving up if I let that stop me. Funny enough, talking about inspiration from the most interesting of places, children's films, especially like a few of the ones that my kids have watched over the years. I think it was a TV show, and I can't remember the name of it. They said the only way to fail is not to try. And I was like, that's so simple, but it's so true and so profound. And it's like, okay, we're just going to keep on going, It's funny to me that there are all these adult shows and films, and it takes a children's show to just lay it out real simple for you, It's like, just don't give up.
That's so clear and memorable.
It is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you thought of that you'd like to talk about or share?
I don't think so. I think we covered every base there.
I think so too. Thank you so much, Andee. This is really nice to hear your words of wisdom about creativity and writing and life.
Yeah. All right.
Really enjoyed it.
All right. Yeah.